This is Vance again. This is part 4 of the Unit 14 notes, and today's lesson is about communities. So a biological community, like we said before, is all the different populations of organisms that live close enough together to interact with each other. And this has to do not only with the animals, but also with the plants and fungi and bacteria and the other things that live in that particular area. So what comprises the community is going to depend on what it is that you're looking at, that you're trying to investigate. For instance, if you're just looking at what lives in a pond, then that could be the community that you're talking about. Or you could talk about just the microbial organisms that live inside of a fish. And that could be the community that you're talking about too. Or it could be something much larger, like an area of the savanna that you see here in this picture. It just depends on what it is that you're looking at, that you're trying to investigate as to what is going to be included in the community. So communities involve various things, including an organism's niche and its habitat. Okay, so the niche is all of the organism's use of the resources in the environment. Okay, and so oftentimes that involves something called competition. Competition occurs when you've got two different populations whose niches overlap with each other, and when there is competition, the interspecies competition, that lowers the carrying capacity of the populations that are competing with each other, because there will be more limited resources, and the resources that are used by one population will not be available to the other. So oftentimes what you'll see is something like you see with these birds here, the warblers this is called niche partitioning, in that the Cape May warblers usually feed, they may all live in the same tree, but the Cape May warblers would feed at the top of the tree, the bay-breasted warbler would feed in the middle part of the tree, and the yellow-rumped warbler would feed in the bottom of the tree. Therefore, they're not competing with each other directly, even though they're all living in the same tree. And so there's various categories of competition that we'll talk about. So interspecific competition usually involves things like symbiotic relationships that you've learned about before. So they're in a mutualistic competition. Basically, both populations benefit from the relationship. They help each other out. The example given here in the table is plants with the mycorrhiza. Mycorrhiza are fungi that live and are near the roots of plants that help the plants absorb water and nutrients, and then therefore get some food from the plant. This is a mutually beneficial relationship. The plants grow much better and are much healthier when they are associated with the mycorrhiza. Another example would be direct competition, like squirrels and black bears, that basically if they're competing for the same nuts in the same tree, then that's going to have a negative effect on both of them, because they're competing directly with each other. In the case of predation, for instance, crocodiles going after fish, then that's going to be a positive relationship for the crocodile, but a negative one for the fish that gets eaten. Herbivory has to do with herbivores, or primary consumers, like caterpillars and leaves. So again, herbivory is going to have a positive relationship for the caterpillar, but negative for the leaves of the tree. And then parasites and pathogens also. The parasite, again, is positive for the parasite, negative for the pathogen. So we'll talk about those different ones and look at some examples in just a minute. So just for some definitions here, mutualism, both populations benefit. In predation, one species kills and eats the other. Okay, the predator and the prey. In commensalism, you have one species that benefits and the other one is neither harmed nor helped. And then parasitism, of course, the host is harmed by the parasite or pathogen. So let's look at some examples. So mutualism, again, you have a symbiotic relationship where both organisms benefit. Some of these are kind of cute and funny, but they're all necessary. They're all true things. We have here the groomer shrimp that grooms the fish. It's beneficial for the shrimp because the shrimp eats what is harming the outside of the fish, and the fish benefits because it's less bothered by the pathogens that can hang on the outside. We have here a bird that basically picks the teeth of the crocodile, and that keeps the crocodile's mouth healthier, and it gives the bird something to eat as well. These are ants in an acacia tree, and they help protect the tree from other insects. And also the thorns on the tree also protect, and that gives a place for the ants to be. These fish also are grooming this sea turtle here. And then finally we have bees and and flowers. And the bee pollinates the flower, and the flower provides food for the bees. In commensalism, you have a symbiotic relationship where one organism benefits and the other is not affected. The remora that hangs on to the shark here catches a ride with the shark. Doesn't harden the shark, sometimes eats the shark's leftovers, but this doesn't bother the shark, and so therefore it's commensal. Same thing with the cowbirds over here, these egrets and the cattle. The egrets will feed on the insects and that congregate around the cattle. Cattle aren't bothered by the egrets, but the egrets benefit from that. And then this one is a little bit unusual, but you might not have seen this before, but polar bears, the hairs on polar bears are hollow, and sometimes when they're in warmer climates, like they sometimes are in a zoo, as is shown here, there will be algae that will colonize the hollow hairs of the bear. It doesn't hurt the bear. Gives the algae a place to live, and they can be quite healthy and grow and be nice and green and get lots of sunlight, okay, and also water when the bears live in the water and go to the water. In parasitism, you've got one organism that benefits and the other one is harmed. This is a particular kind of fish that parasitizes a type of whale and eats on their eyes. Here we have a cuckoo that lays its eggs in the nest of another bird, lets the other bird raise their babies, and the baby cuckoos are often bigger than the other nestlings and actually kick them out sometimes. This is a type of fungus that parasitizes ants and other insects. It's called cordyceps, and basically when the ants ingest or come encounter with the spores actually grow inside the ant's body, and then basically it ends up killing the ants, and then the fruiting body of the fungus grows out of the top of the ant and spreads its spores to other unwitting ants. And then here's the mother bird feeding the baby cuckoo that's much bigger even than the mother, so that's definitely a parasitic relationship. Then predation, it benefits the predator but not the prey, okay, because the predator kills the prey. The prey, therefore, adapt to using protective strategies that help protect them, for instance, camouflage and various kinds of mechanical defenses. Sometimes they taste bad. They have chemical defenses, like skunks have a chemical defense that makes other animals move away from it because it smells really, really bad. And so there are various kinds of things that are used there for protection by various prey to hide from the predators or get away from predators. Here's some nice examples of camouflage that occurs in the natural world. This is a seahorse that obviously can hide from its predators in this coral bed because it has protrusions on its body that kind of match the coral that it hangs around. Here's a moth that looks very much like the leaf litter on the floor of the forest. Here's another moth that looks like the bark of a tree, so it kind of fades in there. And here's a butterfly that matches the petals of the flowers that it hangs out on. This frog here kind of looks like the moss that it's sitting in. An owl sometimes some owls can just disappear in trees because they look so much like the tree. This is a type of spider that actually has the same coloration as the flower it's on, so it really hides very easily. And then here's another frog that blends into a tree. Another kind of defense that some organisms have, this is talking about plants now and not animals, when you have herbivorous insects and animals, oftentimes that drives some adaptations in plants as well. Sometimes plants develop a toxin or something that tastes really bad or that's poisonous, and the herbivores learn to avoid them. There are some plants that can cause abnormal development in insects that eat them so that they don't develop as they're normally supposed to. And then some also illustrate coevolution. So here we have a plant that is often used as a place for a particular kind of moth to lay its eggs, and so some of the leaves have a have a pattern on their leaves that actually look like that somebody's already started laying their eggs there, and so other insects will avoid those particular kinds of leaves. So lots of times you have a lot of reciprocal adaptations between two different species that end up living together for a long time and respond in response to changes in each other.